60 Minutes Overtime.
This week on 60 Minutes, we report from Syria, home to one of the first civilizations. Syria today is picking up the pieces from the ruins of half a century of dictatorship between Bashar al-Assad and his father, Hafez. 500,000 lives lost in a civil war under the younger Assad's hand. Now that he's gone, Syria is looking toward its future. But before the country can plan what's to come, its people want the world to be reminded of what has happened. In 2013, death in Syria was arbitrary and brutal. 2 years into the civil war, murder crept through a suburb of Damascus in a suffocating haze. It was sarin gas, outlawed in 1997. The sarin that killed these civilians was delivered by Syrian army rockets from land then held by Assad. Sarin is heavier than air, so it flowed down stairwells and snuck under doors into basements, exactly where women and children slept to stay safe from the artillery above. Over the years, starvation and shelling continued, forcing millions of Syrians from their homes. And in 2017, there was another chemical attack, this time in the town of Khan Sheikhoun. We traveled there and saw how the dictatorship had bombed hospitals and schools. The nerve gas attacks made us wonder, what's the point of using the most grotesque weapon on civilians, on children? The Assad dictatorship is essentially clearing out any part of the country that it cannot control. Bombing the hospitals kills the here and now. Bombing the schools kills the future. And dropping sarin suffocates whatever might have been left of hope. One group of Syrians made hope its mission. Volunteer rescue workers called the White Helmets. When Assad's dictatorship dropped bombs, the White Helmets jumped in to save civilians buried in the rubble. At one point in the war, they were responding to an average of 35 attacks a day. Throughout the war, the White Helmets say they saved more than 128,000 civilians, and with each, they shouted gratitude to God. When shelling and gassing weren't enough to scare his people into submission, Assad made them simply disappear. The dictatorship dragged thousands of civilians into prisons, where they spent years in a vast network of detention centers. Often, they were tortured.
Our job became solely to take photographs of the bodies of dead human beings that had been tortured to death or killed in the different intelligence branches.
In 2021, we spoke with a photographer who goes by the alias Caesar. He had been a military photographer for 13 years until the horror he saw broke his allegiance to the regime. The photos he'd risked his life to expose were so gruesome, we had to mask them for our broadcast.
When I would take photographs,
to protect his identity, Caesar spoke to us through Moaz Mustafa of the Syrian Emergency Task Force.
It was very clear that they were tortured, not tortured for a day or two, tortured for many, many long months. They were emaciated bodies, purely skeletons. There were people, most of them had their eyes gouged out. There was electrocution, you could tell by the dark spots on their body. There was utilization of knives and also big cables and belts that was used to beat them. And so we could see every type of torture on the bodies of these individuals.
Caesar also photographed the regime's catalog of cruelty, each body carefully documented. Photos like these are among the evidence that independent commissions are now using to show that Syria's crimes against humanity started from the top.
There's no question they lead all the way to President Assad. I mean, this is a top-down, organized effort.
Stephen Rapp is helping to build cases against Assad and his regime. Rapp prosecuted war crimes in Rwanda and Sierra Leone and served as U.S. ambassador for war crime issues. We spoke with him in 2021.
We've got better evidence against Assad and his clique than we had against Milosevic in Yugoslavia, or we had in any of the war crimes tribunals in which I've been involved in. Some extent even better than we had against the Nazis at Nuremberg, because the Nazis didn't actually take individual pictures of each of their victims with identifying information on them.
Syria may never get its Nuremberg moment. Today, Bashar al-Assad and his family are in Russia, where they have asylum and are unlikely to leave. In Damascus, we watched as Syrians took to the street in celebration, but demands for justice are never far from their minds. Assad is a war criminal. Someone like him should die like a dog. He and the Assad family should be executed for the horrors we now see. When we spoke to Stephen Rapp, he told us he's optimistic that there will be one day justice for Syria. If not, this cradle of civilization could become a birthplace of more misery. If Assad gets away with impunity, what has the world lost?
If the word is that you can commit those crimes and that you can get away with it, and this is the way that you suppress a popular uprising, then others will do the same thing. The future will be much more dangerous than the past, and a lot of what we built will be destroyed.